Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our coronavirus webinar industry update with Melissa Bova and John Longstreet. We appreciate you joining us. Want to thank Dell Technologies for sponsoring these webinars each week. If you have any questions about Dell Technologies, give us a call and we can get you a contact to reach out to them. They're a great partner of our association. As always, please mute your lines and use the chat feature only for asking questions. Our questions, we will address them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Hope. Welcome back, everyone. I will take some responsibility for this week because I think I jinxed it, because on Saturday afternoon, I was thinking to myself, next week's a holiday, we're in green, everything's going back to our new normal. And then at 4 o'clock on Sunday, Allegheny County made their announcement, and I feel like it's been going downhill ever since. So we are going to spend a lot of time talking about Allegheny County and Philadelphia today. Also, I will be talking with a bunch of federal updates that I want to fill everybody in on as well. So we will jump right into federal because that's the one I hate the most. So I like to get it over with first. So let's start. COVID-4, we call it COVID-4 because, as you know, we've had a number of COVID packages. We had the Family First, we had P3 Round 1, we had P3 Round 2, and now Congress is gearing up for what we're calling the fourth recovery package. And they are starting to have those preliminary discussions as I talk, while at the same time they made some moves last night, which I'll talk about as well. COVID-4 is going to be what we kind of consider the bill that's going to get us, across the bridge to the other side in terms of items that the industry needs. So it's going to be, we expect, another potentially multi-trillion-dollar bill that we hope will be very inclusive of some of the things that the industry has needed to recover that we haven't gotten across the finish line yet. There is a piece of legislation sponsored by Senator Wicker. It's a $132 billion recovery fund just for restaurants. And I've gotten a few questions about this bill saying, why hasn't PRLA been screaming from the rooftops that this bill needs to pass? And why haven't you activated us in terms of engaging on this bill? And the reason we haven't is because the bill isn't going to move. No standalone recovery bill has moved in the time of COVID. They've always been part of broader packages. So the focus has really been in terms of our national associations, the National Restaurant Association and American Hotel and Lodging Association, is what parts of that Wicker bill and other bills do we want to be included in that COVID-4 package? And all of you are going to be asked to be a part of that decision-making within our national organization. So a poll will be going out, they say this week, which of course, in my cynicism, I'm like next week, to take a survey of priorities of what the industry needs, ranging from, do you want more P3 money? Do you want more tax credits for PPE or coming in compliance in terms of social distancing? Do you want liability protection? The answer to that is yes, 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 liability protection. Do you want business interruption coverage to help cover that business interruption insurance that you couldn't get? They're going to have a list of probably 15 to 20 items, and you are going to be asked, and this will be in the daily update, really, what are the top 3 things that you need as a restaurant and hotel and hospitality operator in the next package? And then what are the 3 things that you're kind of like, would be nice, but I could probably go without? And from there, discussions are going to begin in terms of what that next recovery package is going to look like. They are in a break right now, which is why we're taking this opportunity to identify priorities with the goal of hopefully having another recovery package across the finish line by the August recess, which would be August 7th. So you are going to see a lot more activity, a lot more communication on the federal front as we work towards that recovery package. And as you all know, in terms of your engagement in the last package, you reaching out to our Congress people and our senators is really going to be key in terms of drumming up support and getting it across the finish line. We don't really have time for a pissing match in Congress right now. We need relief now, especially as we're starting to see this backpedaling occur within the industry in terms of COVID cases. So as those priorities are put out and a new document is released in terms of priorities, we will be asking all of you to engage. And like I mentioned, the goal is to have that across the finish line in some form by August 7th. So that's kind of where we are in COVID-4. P3. We had a change last night, at least partially a change. In P3, the application window technically closed yesterday, June 30th, and it remains closed. So if you did not draw down a P3, did not apply for a P3, you can no longer do so as of today, July 1st. Now, the Senate late last night, let me put my email on mute. The Senate late last night did pass an extension to August 8th to draw down on P3. And that's because there's still about $130 billion that hasn't been drawn down. So they did pass by unanimous consent the ability for the P3 to reopen until August 8th. The House has not moved on that yet. So as of right now, there's no ability to draw down on more P3 funds, but there is a push to extend that to August 8th. To that end, I think we're all looking as part of that COVID-4 package. If the House does allow the extension and people aren't drawing down, let's maybe utilize those funds to get more funding back to those of you, as I've mentioned in the past 2 updates, who drew down the P3 in the first week that it was available. So all of the 24 weeks, the 60-40, all those changes we got that you were not able to take advantage of, we are looking at potentially reopening that in part of that COVID-4 package to draw a few more P3 funds to those of you that might not have been able to take advantage of them in the first place. And part of that does include, the discussion continues, including destination marketing organizations and C6s as part of the COVID-4 package, recognizing that they were not included in the initial P3 that was out there. So, as I said, the application window has closed for right now. The House has not decided if they're going to agree to extending that application period. So as of right now, no changes, but there is a push to open up P3 for those of you who haven't drawn down on it as of yet. Unemployment compensation. I put this on here primarily because we're getting a lot of questions because things are confusing as it pertains to federal everything. You've been seeing on social media a 13-week extension of unemployment compensation. Technically, unemployment compensation ends after 26 weeks of collecting unemployment. Part of the CARES package extended that to 39 weeks, so people could collect unemployment for 39 weeks. I'm going to tell you right now, that is not inclusive of the extra $600. There's a lot of confusion that people think that the employees are going to be able, and employees even think, that they will be able to collect an extra $600 a week for an extra 13 weeks. That $600 ends not even July 31st, because that's another misconception. It's going to end July 25th or 26th, depending on where Pennsylvania is paying out when those funds are paid out. So when you hear 13 weeks, they can still apply, but the extra $600 does, as of right now, end at the end of this month. Now, there is discussion as part of the COVID-4 package of extending the $600. You can imagine the House had already tried to extend it. The Senate's pushing back on that. There might be some form of an extension, but to that end, I think there's recognition that you are struggling enough as it is to bring your employees back, and extending the $600 really just makes it more difficult for you to bring your employees back off of unemployment. So there's going to be conversations there, but as of right now, that $600 ends at the end of this month. The 13 weeks is not tied to that in any way. A few update on other CARES Act funding that's slowly being clarified and released. One is the Main Street Lending Program, which we have never talked about before, because honestly, everybody on this call was probably eligible for the P3, and the P3 is a much nicer opportunity for you. The Main Street Lending Program was part of the CARES Act. It was $600 billion. It was really to target those businesses that couldn't pull down a P3. And it's not a grant, it's not forgivable, it's a loan. So that $600 billion is sitting there, but a lot of people are not drawing down on it because they've either pulled down on the P3 or they don't have enough information as it pertains to what that Main Street Lending Program would look like. And even banks are still trying to figure out if they're going to be offering that loan. But that is another $600 billion that's kind of sitting out there that as we're talking about a COVID-4 package, if people aren't taking advantage of it, could that be encapsulated into another funding piece to help all of you kind of get across the finish line in terms of relief? But if you are not eligible for the P3 and you're looking at the Main Street lending program, those funds are starting to be released to banks that are willing to offer it. Quick update for my destination marketing organizations, and you might not be on the call yet because you were on a 10 o'clock call, but I'm sure you're all going to watch it later. So if you're not on, I'll speak to it. There was clarification regarding coronavirus relief funds as it pertains to our destination marketing organizations. Previously, the understanding was that they would not be eligible for coronavirus relief funds, and those are the funds from the federal government that came to Pennsylvania to be used for coronavirus relief and went to counties to provide for coronavirus relief. Just late last week, the Treasury did specify that destination marketing organizations could be eligible for some of those funds if they're used in a limited way. So they really can only be used for promoting an area in terms of that it's safe from coronavirus, or these are the steps that a county is taking to make tourists feel safe. So you can use the funds for tourism promotion, but it has to be somehow tied to the relief efforts and the steps that the county and industry is taking to provide coronavirus relief. So that just came out late last week. So that's another not cure-all for our destination marketing organizations, but it was a tweak that did come down from the federal guidance. And we're starting to see these tweaks. Everybody hit the CARES Act pot pretty hard in the beginning, but there are pots of money that were not tapped into or have not been fully utilized. Like I mentioned, the Main Street lending program. So we might be seeing some more tweaks from the Treasury as it pertains to the use of those funds. So stay tuned. I will say that this month, first week of August, going to get a little rowdy on the federal level. So please stay tuned to the daily updates. And as always, we'll make them as succinct and helpful as possible to you. Let's go to state. Okay. On top of Allegheny County and Philadelphia driving me crazy this week, I was thrilled because session was done at the state level, so we would get the summer off. And now the House just scheduled session for next week, so I just feel like I'm on this merry-go-round. But they're still in session here in Harrisburg. The Senate wrapped up a few items this week. The only things really of note were some pieces of legislation to address the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter debate, and much needed reforms that needed to be made on the state level in terms of recognizing some of these policing policies that aren't appropriate and quite frankly are unnecessary and extreme. So the primary pieces of legislation that were moved this week were those, and the House is going to return next week to get some of those across the finish line into the governor's office. So we're seeing a paring down and a phase down of legislative action, at least at the state level. I did mention last week, I gave you Melissa's personal opinion on video gaming terminals and that piece of legislation. That is going to be an issue that's addressed in the fall. I did mention it last week. I said, when you have people with millions of dollars all fighting with each other, everybody kind of throws up their hands and goes home. And I think that's a little bit of what happened in terms of the VGT debate last week. But there is a push to bring that up in the fall, which would, of course, allow VGTs to be permitted in restaurants and bars. So that's something that's going to be dealt with in the fall. Also, legislature, hopefully now next week, after the House is in session on the 7th and the 8th, will recess for the rest of the summer. But if we do have that COVID-4 package, which drives funds to the state and to states, we might see them return in August in terms of kind of getting those funds out there to places that need it and using it to balance the budget. We are looking, continue to look at a $5 billion deficit as it pertains to the state budget. Still, I was just off the mark last week because I really thought the Supreme Court was going to rule last week on the House and Senate resolutions regarding the governor's emergency declaration. They have not ruled yet. Maybe this week, maybe it's happened. I don't think so, but I haven't trolled all of the news sites. But we're still waiting for that We're still waiting for that information in terms of the Supreme Court ruling. The Commonwealth Court cannot rule. The Supreme Court will be the one to rule. And as I said, at the end of the day, it's not going to make too much of a difference, because if they rule the governor has to end his emergency declaration, he can just issue another one. So as you hear kind of the political rhetoric about it, I will say it again, please continue to follow the rules as they pertain to all of the emergency declarations. And we'll talk about that, because we've had a little bit of a doubling down on some of those requirements. Grant programs, I touched upon these last week. PRLA has legislation that was introduced that would create a grant program for restaurants. We're working on legislation that would create a small grant program for our destination marketing organizations. Both of those are probably going to be not seeing action until the legislature returns in August or the fall. So they are not right now items. Right now, the legislature's worked for a few weeks and they're tired and they want to go home. So a lot of those grant programs are going to be pushed back until the fall. And I think to a certain extent, I want to get you guys all the money in the world, but we do need to see what that COVID-4 package looks like. So if we need to tailor some of those grants to really target the areas where you need it the most, I think we want to be prepared to do that. So we do really want to see where those grant programs end up in terms of as it pertains to COVID-4. Cocktails to go, friendly reminder, and this is kind of, it's not funny. Nothing's funny with COVID at this point. When we passed cocktails to go back in May, there was a parameter in there that says that if you are selling mixed drinks to go, you need to get a transaction scan device within 60 days. And I think all of you on the call back in May was like, well, I'm not going to need cocktails to go in 60 days because I'm going to be back to normal and everything's going to be fine. Well, here we are. And 60 days hits on July 20th. And I think that we are going to be in dull green up to and through July 20th. So if you have not obtained a transaction scan device and you are still doing cocktails to go, I continue to support all of you financially in that vein. You need that transaction scan device by July 20th. And if you go on our website, on our business resources, and Ben loves to throw things up there, so I'm sure Ben will put up a link. We do have some sources that we have that you can obtain one with discounts and all of that. But if you decide you do not want to do cocktails to go because you don't want to get the device, then you don't need the device. It's really after July 20th, you're going to continue to be giving me my margaritas out the door. This is another item that I wanted to touch upon. We've been getting a few questions, is relating to a statewide business assistance grant program that opened up yesterday on June 30th. This was in our daily update about 2 weeks ago when the governor announced it. It's that $225 million grant program. $100 million is kind of for Main Street revitalization, small businesses. Another is for historically disadvantaged businesses. And the third is, I forget, but it's, you guys are really going to be in the Main Street revitalization box for the $100 million. I've gotten a few questions about this. You have 10 days to apply. So it opened up yesterday. You have 10 days to apply to be within the first round. I say that because they're not doing it based on first come, first serve. They're basing it on if you meet all of the qualifications and check all of the boxes to receive some of this grant money. So if you want to be in the first round, you need to apply within 10 days. You can apply after 10 days, but you would be considered in a second yet to be determined round as it pertains to that $100 million. I know I had some people that were concerned, the fact that 10 days is inclusive of the 4th of July. They don't seem to care, and if not a lot of people apply, then we'll have a second round that everybody can have a crack at. But for that $100 million statewide business assistance grant program that did open up yesterday, you are applying that through your county industrial corporation or your development corporation. That's how those are being distributed. So, and I couldn't think of the rules, but it's very strict in terms of who can apply for that in terms of small business. So definitely check and see if you're eligible. And that's also why we're trying to focus on some larger grant programs for those of you that might not be eligible for some of these really tiny ones that we're seeing being rolled out. And then let's just go to the whole reason everybody joins the call every week, which is reopening or closing, depending on the county that you live. Here we are. And I want to note that John Longstreet is just not on this call right now. So he's just going to make me have all of the questions today. So
I am on. I just got on, Melissa.
I thought you abandoned me. So I'll bring John into some of this, but want to provide a few updates on what's been happening this week. What we're seeing, it doesn't matter what news article you read, we're seeing an uptick in cases across the country. And we're seeing it primarily in those places that reopened sooner than Pennsylvania did. I don't know, outside of our surrounding states, I think everybody reopened sooner than Pennsylvania did. But we're seeing an uptick in cases, and that is affecting Pennsylvania. And even in Pennsylvania, in certain areas, we are starting to see an uptick in cases. We have been above 600 cases a day for about primarily the last week. Before that, we were at 200, 300, 400 cases. So we are starting to see an uptick in Pennsylvania. And it's something that we are really keeping an eye on. The things that are keeping me up at night is, and I'll talk about Allegheny County and Philadelphia. As we see an uptick in cases, we do not want to have ourselves backpedal in terms of the restrictions that are already in place and the state putting on more restrictions. So we're really focused on educating all of you in terms of that. John, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to Pennsylvania specifically, and then I'll dive into an Allegheny County update.
Sure. And it probably, as far as Pennsylvania goes, I'd like to comment when we get to the position on guidelines, which is at the end, Melissa. But I will say that after Allegheny County made the announcement over the weekend, which Melissa's going to queue up, and I'd be happy to chime in on if she wants, what we're doing about that. We did reach out to the governor's office Monday morning, and at this moment in time, they're closely monitoring the situation around the state. And but at this point in time, do not anticipate changes in the guidance, and have recommitted their commitment to collaborate with PRLA, particularly as it relates to restaurant and food service guidance, should anything need to change along the way. We've had an excellent relationship with the governor and his team throughout this, and that continues to stay in force. I'll talk more about what we're doing to try to help with guidelines and such as we get a little bit further at the end of this section, I guess. Melissa, whenever you want me to.
Okay, let me talk a little bit about Allegheny County, because I think that is what's keeping everybody up at night. At 4 o'clock, whenever you see a press conference announced for 4 o'clock on a Sunday, you just know it's bad news. So at 4 o'clock, Allegheny County held a press conference that essentially said cases are significantly increasing in Allegheny County. Now, they put it in, it's not that they had like thousands of cases or hundreds of cases. It was just that cases increased in comparison to how Allegheny County was performing before. But the county executive and the health department felt that steps needed to be taken. They primarily blamed people that were coming back from vacation from our North Carolina and shore locations, that they were bringing back COVID and spreading it, but also that young kids were congregating at the bars and restaurants were doing the right job, a good job in terms of social distancing. So they, the first place in the country we've ever seen it, shut down all on-premise consumption of alcohol beginning at 5 o'clock last night, June 30th. Let me tell you what that is inclusive of. We've had a number of questions. It's universal, no consumption of alcohol on any premise. It doesn't matter if it's a restaurant. It doesn't matter if it's a hotel. It doesn't matter if it's a ballroom. It doesn't matter if it's a banquet facility. You cannot have anybody at any licensed facility in Allegheny County consuming alcohol. And that is also inclusive, we've gotten this question too, of BYOBs. It's not if you have a liquor license. We've seen a few liquor licensees saying now we're BYOB. They're saying it doesn't matter. You cannot consume alcohol anywhere on the premises. Further to that end, we have some questions in terms of the press conference in and of itself. It seemed to give the impression that you couldn't consume alcohol inside, but you might be able to outdoors. It's anywhere. So it's really almost like where we were in terms of red and yellow as it pertains to alcohol. Anywhere on the premises, people cannot be consuming alcohol. We've never seen anything like it before. I think understandably over the weekend, there were a few bad actors, as we've seen throughout the state. And as I've said, I will turn you in at this point. If you are out there breaking the rules, I will do it. I don't care. But those bad actors really just caused, the county's heads to explode, and they felt they needed to do something drastic. And I think this is about as drastic as they could go. That started last night at 5 p.m. Since then, I think, fingers crossed, there's recognition from the county executive that there could probably be a more moderate approach. And to that end, John, our fearless leader, and a few of our members out in Allegheny County have a meeting with him to discuss those alternatives. I will throw this out there as well, and it's just my Melissa warning to everybody. I have heard that there is a rally being discussed outside of county council tomorrow. I optically would be concerned that if the county shut you down because people are congregating at restaurants, the response should not be restaurant owners congregating outside of county government. That just doesn't make me comfortable. So if you're thinking of participating in that, I would just urge you that maybe congregating because you're angry that you can't congregate is not the right response in this state. But to that end, like I said, we had a great call this morning in terms of PRLA supporting enforcement. I'm going to let John, when I get to the position on guidelines, I think John's going to talk about enforcement. But this is not something that we are ignoring. We have on our website, www.prla.org/ACAB. If you want to engage and get updates on that alcohol ban in Allegheny County, those will be in the daily update, but will also be posted on that site as well. Philadelphia, I took it to the chin on Sunday, and then yesterday I took it to the other side of my chin in Philadelphia. We expected a delay in terms of Philadelphia delaying indoor dining. I think the city's been pretty clear that when they were going to allow indoor dining at 50% on July 3rd, at the end of last week, we kind of realized it wasn't going to be July 3rd. What we were not expecting was the preliminary announcement that the indoor dining would not be allowed until August 1st. They caveated that by saying they'll review it every week, but they pretty much said don't expect to allow indoor dining until August 1st. We are reaching out to the health commissioner to try and have a conversation. Again, the concerns of what we're seeing at the shore, the concerns of what we're seeing with young people, I think that there are some further restrictions that can be put in place to address that without hurting all of the good operators. So we're going to continue to try and have those conversations. But for my hotels, I'm telling you, it's wedding date. And please don't send the brides after me because I cannot take the crying bride calls. It's breaking me. But to that end, for my hoteliers in Philadelphia, that is inclusive of your private events. And Philadelphia is saying in pushing yellow forward in terms of 25 people. So you cannot have any indoor dining, anything in Philadelphia until August 1st. So don't get mad at the messenger, but that is the message. And I think our concern right now, which is why John has reached out to the governor's office, is as we see an uptick in cases, we don't want this to become a statewide thing. The governor has said he's not looking to make some of these restrictions a statewide thing, but I still have PTSD from St. Patrick's Day when you all got shut down right before St. Patrick's Day. So we are working very actively in terms of getting on top of it on that front. In Lebanon County, you are going green. Finally, you're the last county. But to that end, I want to chip it to John just really to reinforce where PRLA is on the restrictions out there. I know we were trying to be supportive and wishy-washy before, but I think we are really at a place where all of us on this call and all of us in the industry need to take a harder line. So I'm going to leave that to John to eloquently speak to.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the work you've done in adding on Allegheny County to everything else you were working with this week. We do have a good plan and an open opportunity to speak with Rich Fitzgerald tomorrow about this. He's open to suggestions. We hope to have the same collaborative effort with him that we've had with the governor, and we also already have one with the Allegheny County Health Department. So we're hoping that we can come up with a way that we can safely serve folks when we get together with him. I will also add to what Melissa so accurately described is the governor supported after the fact Executive Fitzgerald's actions, and not surprisingly, and counties, particularly if they have a county health department, have the authority to exceed the governor's standards. And so this is something that might not stop in Allegheny County. It's one of the reasons why we'd like to make sure that we, to the degree it can be moderated, make sure it's moderated. A huge part of the problem is bad actors, and Melissa touched on that earlier, and a huge specific problem in Pittsburgh was bad actors. And there's a couple of issues with this, and I will just touch on them briefly. One is the penalties for noncompliance in the statewide orders, we're going to say are not severe enough. And all of the good actors, which is the vast majority, 95% of our members, 95% of the restaurant community so far agree with that. And so consequently, people break the law, they do the wrong thing, they put people's lives in danger because it only costs them a warning or a $250 fine. And the Allegheny County Department of Health order, violation of the new order will entail a 1-week closure of the operation, which is probably appropriate if somebody's doing what they're doing and not only endangering lives, but endangering the entire industry. So PRLA will be taking the position that we will absolutely not support people that break the law or bad actors. And in fact, we have about 200 chapter leaders across the state, and we're going to be enabling them or encouraging them as emissaries to try to stop bad actors by reasoning with them and talking with them. And we've already had that happen in several jurisdictions, and it's worked out quite well. Because the people that are obeying the law are suffering right now. And you might say, well, why don't we just enforce the rules better? One, they're probably not, the enforcement penalties probably aren't stringent enough. We've already touched that. And secondly, it's a massive undertaking. It's a massive new set of guidelines that have to be enforced, that there's a very difficult time getting those enforced. So we're also already working with the Department of Community and Economic Development and Allegheny Health Department, and anybody else that wants to work with us on the concept of education. Educating people on face masks, social distancing, probably the two most important things. And there's no question about this anymore. People that don't believe it are from another planet. This is a problem, and it's a nationwide problem. There's 21 states that are seriously backsliding, 29 that are backsliding. Pennsylvania is one of the very few that aren't. So we've got to be diligent about this as leaders within this industry, both to save the industry and to save people's lives. So we're going to be working on education campaigns, and I would hope that everybody that's diligent enough to tune in for these updates each week and want to do the right thing will help with that, because that's the solution. I've had people say to me to compare the wearing of a face mask to the wearing of a motorcycle helmet. If you're a biker, if you don't wear a motorcycle helmet, you might kill yourself. If you don't wear a mask, you might kill somebody else. It's a big difference between what is being asked of us today versus other rules that we've seen in the past. It's absolutely critical to the industry that we get behind this. Social distancing, face coverings, face masks. Governor Wolf has been very careful in managing this crisis, without a doubt. Very careful in managing the crisis, and consequently, he took a lot of heat for how slowly we were reopening. Ultimately, we reopened, at least for the restaurant industry, with some very fair guidelines, maybe among the most fair in the country, and the governor counting on the fact that we were going to do our jobs in following the guidelines to keep people safe. Because of the actions that we've taken, I believe the majority of us have taken, and the governor's taken, Pennsylvania is one of the very few states that's not having a serious backslide, and a lot of people are being saved because of that, and a lot of businesses might stay open, but it's only going to happen if we continue to follow the rules. So I implore you to get behind this. You all come in contact with a lot of other colleagues. You see somebody that's a bad actor, do whatever you need to do to convince them to come into compliance. If not, it's the LCE, the Department of Ag, or your county health department, if you have it, or the main enforcement agencies in this. They're doing the best they can, I believe. It's just a daunting undertaking. So with that, Melissa, I'll turn it back to you.
Unmute. Okay, next slide. We'll just do a brief update for Philadelphia. We did pass good legislation in Philadelphia. It was so refreshing to help the industry. So we do have third-party delivery legislation was passed last week unanimously in council. Also, we're able to put into statute those outdoor dining parameters to allow the expansion of outdoor dining, to allow it to continue into the end of this year. So if people want to sit outside on December 29th, you do you, boo. But it does extend it until the end of the year. To that end, we still need the mayor to sign those pieces of legislation. We have been told that he will be signing them next week. So as soon as he signs them, the third-party delivery cap, that 15% cap, that will go into effect immediately. So we will be getting that information out to our Philadelphia members to ensure that if you're getting charged exorbitant fees in terms of delivery, which is certainly going to be our life in the near future in Philadelphia, to make sure that as soon as that takes effect, you're making sure those fees are capped. Also in Philadelphia, as an FYI, I know as John spoke to, everybody on this call is following the rules, but there was legislation that allows employees to file a complaint against a business if you are not taking the proper precautions to protect them from COVID. So if you're not providing them with the masks, if you're not providing the hand sanitizer, the ability to wash their hands, if you're not ensuring social distancing to the best of your ability, a complaint can be filed against you. And if you are found at fault, not only are you fined by the city, but it gives your employee a private right of action against you. So it really, it's the first of its kind in the country. It will not be the last. So for my members in Philadelphia, make sure you're following the guidelines from the governor, from the city. If you are following them, you should be covered. We're able to get that language into the bill that says if you're doing all the right things, you are not going to be subject to be in violation of this law. But that law was signed by the mayor and did take effect immediately. So that's just something to keep in mind in Philadelphia in terms of enforcement on that end. And then I think we're going to go over general resources and we will go to questions. I'll do general resources. Okay. If you go on one of the items that John, to kind of go off of what John discussed before, as it relates to best practices and going above and beyond, and not only showing your employees and your guests, but government, that you're going above and beyond to ensure the safety of your business and everybody in it. We do urge you to go onto our page and look at the restaurant and hotel promise. It is something that you can put at the front of your business. I've been seeing it as I've been going out and about, and it really does show your guests that you are taking the proper precautions, and it's just an extra step that you can take to make them feel more comfortable as they're coming out. So we urge you, it's completely voluntary. You just print it out, you can put it on your door, and there's just some certain parameters that you would be volunteering to follow to ensure that safety. And we are working with the state as well to kind of turn it into a state program that's also inclusive of retailers. So make me go down the rabbit hole of the big box stores and the Walmarts and the Targets that have not been doing such a great job on all of those fronts. But there will be a promise put together for them that will be inclusive of all three that the state is looking to put forward as well. Reopening, we have, and if you haven't gone on our website, please go on it because there's so much information. And I promise you, if you have a question, you're probably going to find the answer on the website, especially in terms of the reopening page. That is all of our Bible right now. So PRLA.org/reopening PA restaurants. We've been doing webinars on best practices. We have all of the information you need in terms of enforcement and what things you need to do, any changes or updates that have happened along the way. All of that's going to be on that website. And of course, the daily update, if you've noticed we noticed about 3 weeks ago that she was getting a little long. So we have shortened the daily update to really make it concise, really give you the information that you need just from today. So please take a chance to look at that, even glance at it every day. In time, our hope is that we won't need a daily update. And that is a day that I look forward to every day. But for right now, we do still need one, and please take a moment to look at it. We promise everything in there is helpful, and will hopefully get us all through what seems like a never-ending journey. Next, upcoming webinars. Me, what could happen over 4th of July for me to update you on July 8th? I guess we're going to find out on July 8th. That, I think, is the only upcoming webinar we have right now. But Hope is always sourcing and looking for webinars as well. So if you have a thought for a webinar topic that we have not covered, or you think it would be helpful to reinforce, we're always interested in hearing from you, and we want to be able to provide content and information that you would find helpful. And I like to think that I'm brilliant, and I know it's going through all of your heads, but I'm not that brilliant. So if you have ideas of things, please reach out to Hope and let her know. We are happy to get those turned around and up on the website now to everybody. And to that, let's go to everybody's favorite part of the webinar, Melissa's snarky responses to questions, or just honest responses. It just depends. First question. What is the logic of Allegheny County and Philly not allowing alcohol to be served tableside? I understand the difficulty of social distancing at a bar, but why can it not be served at a table? Philadelphia is somehow more lenient than Allegheny County to a certain extent, which is a scary place to be. You can still have alcohol at your outdoor table in Philadelphia. So there is nothing changed in terms of service of alcohol in Philadelphia as of right now. You cannot have indoor dining of any sort, but you can serve alcohol outdoors. And then I think we did touch upon a little bit on the Allegheny County front. I think that there was a lot of frustration with young people out and congregating and not wearing masks, and businesses basically saying no thank you to the rules and allowing them to do so. And I think Allegheny County felt they needed to come down hard on that front. If they had asked John or I ahead of time, we probably would have advised them to take a different path, but this is the path that they took. And I think we are, cautiously optimistic that they want to work with us to find a better way to go after where the problems are, which historically it's after 10 o'clock at night when people aren't going out to have a meal anymore. They're going out just to drink. And maybe that's where we need to be focusing our attention in terms of cutting down on that. So that was Allegheny County's logic. I hope they take a step back. Philadelphia, just because they've plateaued in terms of their cases, they are worried that they're going to see an increase because everybody's going down the shore in Philly right now. And they're just trying to get ahead of it. And that was really why the decision on indoor dining came down. Dancing at weddings, mask on or off. If their butt is not in a seat, they need to be wearing a mask. I know it's crazy. I know it's frustrating. I know people are going to complain. If their butt is not in a seat at their table, they need to be wearing a mask. So everybody needs to get a nice breathable mask so that when they're dancing on the dance floor, they can breathe, because technically they should be wearing their mask on the dance floor. Where can we find the official language regarding the tweak affecting CARES Act? It's really going to be, Otto, up to your county. And what we have, I closed the thing. What we had was essentially Treasury saying that you can use it for promotion as it relates to recovery from COVID. So it's going to be a conversation to have with your county if they haven't spent all their money, in terms of maybe using some of that money for the DMO to promote the county, focusing on what the county's done to recover from COVID and that it's safe for tourism to return. So it can't just be blanket, come visit Philadelphia. It has to be Philadelphia's case count is 20 a day and we're safe, so come and see us. So it has to be tied to COVID recovery. And that's going to be a conversation to have with your county. When are venues able to allow site visits for social events or corporate social? You're allowed to do that around the state. I mean, you couldn't do food tastings in Philadelphia and then in Lebanon County, not until they go green. But you are allowed to have site visits. Now, if that's a Philadelphia question, you could give them a tour, but you cannot allow them to consume any food or beverages inside the establishment. So I might need a clarification on that question. The site visits would be permissible in green, but not in Philadelphia if you're consuming food or beverages. How does the current order in Allegheny County apply to the sale of alcohol or beverages in a gift shop, pantry, hotel lobby? Additionally, if someone has alcohol in their guest room that they first, okay, two-part question. I'll start with the first one. You cannot sell alcohol for them to consume on premise. So if they are purchasing a bottle of wine from your gift shop and sitting in the lobby and drinking the wine, or sitting in your restaurant and drinking the wine, that would not be permissible. To go further, I'm hearkening back to red stage. Room service, people taking it back to their room, is considered a takeout order. So that would be permissible. If I go and get a bottle of wine from the gift shop and take it back to my hotel room, that is considered a takeout order, and alcohol to go is permitted. That would be allowed. It's the consumption of the beverages in the public space of the facility. So room service would still be permitted. It's considered takeout. Cities are creating spaces for people to take food to consume off premise in streets and parking lots not connected to any one licensee. Can to-go cocktails be consumed in such an area? Yes, technically, because it's an unlicensed area and it has to not be on the property of the business. So it can't be my parking lot is I own my parking lot and people can go drink to go there because they're saying you can't consume any, and this is Allegheny County specifically. If this is an Allegheny County question, I need to reiterate that because everyone has different rules. If it is your property, they cannot. If a city has shut down a park and set up tables and said that people can take their food and drinks to go and sit there, that would be permissible. To that end, you do have open container laws. So if you do that and your city is enforcing open containers or people drinking in public, you would be looking at the cops in that scenario. So it really just depends on the scenario, what's licensed, unlicensed, and if the city is enforcing open container laws or not. So you have LCD rules, health department rules, and just city, county rules. And I am now feeling really bad for all of you right now. Are hotel guests permitted to consume alcohol in their guest room? Yes, I did touch upon that. And room service is considered to go. It was considered to go in red. It was considered to go in yellow. It is considered to go in whatever, I don't know, purple place that Allegheny County is right now. How long do you anticipate the Allegheny County alcohol ban will last? Well, if John does his job tomorrow, not much longer. Here's where the health department is. And we're going to have restrictions of some sort in Allegheny County for 2 weeks because they want to crack down on where the problems are and want the counts to be down after 2 weeks. And we all know 2 weeks is how long you have to quarantine. 2 weeks is really when you can see how much the virus is spreading. So they're saying some restrictions in place for 2 weeks. Our hope is that we will be able to alleviate restrictions to allow on-premise consumption, allow private events as much as we can in the short term. And we will have that hopefully after we have a meeting tomorrow. Of course, we might have a meeting tomorrow and they might want to think on it for a day or two. But our goal, right now they're saying 2 weeks. Our goal is to come up with a compromise to allow you to serve alcohol sooner. And Bob is a fan of John. He supports John's comments on 1 week closure. So there you go, John. Any insight so far on how indoor dining and bar seating is going in the small counties, excluding Philadelphia and Allegheny, that are green? Generally, your more rural counties, their counts are low. We're seeing maybe 1 or 2 cases a day. Lancaster is seeing an increase. Dauphin County is seeing an increase. Your more medium-sized counties, we're seeing an increase. Depending on who you talk to, it's because of community spread or it's because of the prison. In Dauphin County, our prison has a bunch of cases, or it's the nursing homes continue to be an item. So we're seeing a slight uptick in some more popularized, counties, and that is why we are. John will do it again, and I'll turn you in, as I mentioned earlier that I would anyway. we're really focusing on you all being really careful, because if the cases increase, we do not want to crack down. That brings us, and I don't think we're going to go back to yellow, but we certainly don't want to crack down where people are saying it's the 23-year-olds going to the bar at night, and that's why cases surged, and therefore we're going to stop indoor dining or alcohol at restaurants in these 6, 7, 8 counties. So generally, like I said, rural, it's fine, but in like the Eries, the Dolphins, the Lancasters of the world, we're seeing an uptick. And the Southeast, we're watching that very closely as well. And John, Bob is there to help you in terms of educating the industry on face masks. So there you go. Allison is also in. This is great. Isn't it fun? This is like the same thing with plexiglass in March, where I was like, plexiglass in restaurants, that's weird. And then when they did the initial face mask requirement, I was like, that's weird. And now we're all in. Good. I don't want to get COVID. Noticed additional language on masking during meals, distancing at tables in the Allegheny County ban language. Are they more stringent than what had been in place previously? Yes. But 10 minutes extra time of wearing the mask more stringent. So state guidance says that everybody needs to wear their mask until they are seated at their table. Then they can remove the mask when they're seated at their table. Allegheny County is saying you have to wear the mask until your food arrives, and then you would need to take the mask off to eat the food. So Allegheny County is saying that even when you're seated, if you do not have your non-alcoholic beverage in front of you or food in front of you, you need to be wearing your mask. So it's different. It's about, like I said, 10 minutes worth of difference. Don't ask me the logic. I got nothing there. Philadelphia, regarding those of us who are delinquent on paying liquor tax, any update on an effort to get a payment plan program? Yes, we're working on it. Council just recessed last week, but we are working. The goal is to work with them over the summer on items such as that. Drink tax specifically, we are looking at trying to give you until the end of the year to catch up without any penalties or fees assessed. So those are things that we are looking in Philadelphia, and I don't want to say there's any silver lining or glass half full that you can't operate indoors yet in Philly, but the fact that you cannot right now, I think is really going to help us push back in terms of getting those tax payments delayed. They will not go away. Philadelphia wants its money, but I think we can get some traction in terms of delaying the payments and eliminating the fees and late fees assessed to those. Texas, John loves Texas questions. Texas, I believe, closed the bars, but is allowing alcohol for those who get over 50% of their income from food sales. I was in 3 Allegheny County restaurants over the weekend, all who were doing everything right. It's some of the bars who weren't following the rules, photos all over social media. I really wish we could get Allegheny County executives and health department to move that direction. John?
Well, I think what I would say, even though it's a Texas-related question, it's a good question. I think what the county is going to say is that that's a standard that makes enforcement really difficult. 50% standard is not a bad idea. It's not just Texas. I've seen it elsewhere, and it clearly separates what might be considered just a bar from a restaurant. But I think whatever standards might be adopted to bring back some sort of alcohol service in Allegheny County, I think they're going to want to make sure they're clear and easy to enforce, because we've already touched on the challenges with everyone being understaffed right now for enforcement. So I do think it's a good idea. Texas, while you bring it up, though, by the way, is one of the states that everyone was holding up as a bellwether. Oh, they're open, everybody's safe, and now they're back way behind Pennsylvania, not only in statewide in what's allowed, but the cases are skyrocketing, and Texans now are prohibited from traveling to New York without quarantining. What a big change in 2 weeks, huh?
John, do you want to take this next question? We are really struggling with guests not wearing masks now in Allegheny. We could be shut down for a week. Any suggestions? Well, technically, I will say this. The week cut down is going to be on you are violating the rules. The frustrating part of all of this is that they're continuing to say it's personal responsibility for your guests. So, John, do you want to speak to how we get the guests to wear their masks?
It's really hard, and you've seen a lot of social media recently about people that are enforcing the mask laws, like the Starbucks, what do they call them, barista, who got $80,000 in a GoFundMe page because that person enforced the law. I think that what it's going to require, and it is really hard, is you've just got to say it's the law that you have to wear a face covering. It's the law that I need to make sure you're wearing one. And if you're not, I can be closed down for a week, and I can't afford that. So you've either got to go back out to your car and get a face mask, or go somewhere else. And I'm sorry, but that's the law. I don't know what else to tell you on that. And it may mean you'll lose a party, but losing a party is a lot less than losing a restaurant or losing a life.
Okay. How about any guidance with musicians, orchestras, or choirs about mask wearing or social distancing? For your musicians, if you have any type of live music, that all needs to be 6 feet away from your guests. So you have to have social distancing with them. And there is the parameter of if they cannot do their job, if they are wearing a mask, then they do not have to wear a mask. So I would say your lead singer would not need to wear a mask. Now, if your drummer doesn't sing or doesn't do background vocals, I would say your drummer or your bassist or your violin player would need to be wearing a mask. And those are the parameters on that front. Are there specific requirements on what type of scanner is required? For example, I assume an iPhone is not sufficient and it has to specifically be a scanner. But there's a broad range on Amazon, and I know you have links on your site. Thanks for that. You're welcome, Lori. I could continue to say whoever drafted this legislation is brilliant, but there is no requirement of what that transaction scan device needs to be specifically. You just need something that's going to check the IDs of the people coming through. Another question that we've had is that if you want a transaction scan device that scans real IDs, those suckers are like $800. Doesn't require that either. Now, would it be a good investment for you to have a transaction scan device, especially if you have guests visiting that tend to look under the age of 30, like me? But generally, you need a transaction scan device. So if there, even on our website, I think we have something that an app you can download, all of that. It doesn't say what it needs to be. You just need to have one. So it can be something that you have on your phone, but you do need to have something on premise at all times. So if it's on your phone and you're not on premise when people are selling drinks to go, you would need to find an alternative there. This is my favorite part. Thanks, Eric. Any update on lifting the 250 cap on private events? Dominic, I would not, I don't want to go into Wedding Gate again, because Wedding Gate was a terrible time for me. I do not see 250 going away in the current parameters of people congregating within the next few weeks. I think we are in dull green for the foreseeable future. As I said before, I don't think it's forever, but I think as our counts are in the 600 range and possibly increasing, 250 is going to be there. John has been working and information has been submitted to the governor's office as it pertains to trade shows and ginormous venues that could accommodate more than 250. My gut says 250 is going to be the number without any changes, at least for the next month or so.
Yeah, Melissa, we had some active discussions going on this, and I will have to say, I'd be shocked if they're not stalled now. Even Texas went from 500 gathering down to 50 now. And I think there's no appetite right now to talk about this anymore. Although we did have some good momentum going on it, as Melissa correctly pointed out, but I don't want to set up any false hope. It's a bad situation right now.
Where can I find guidance on a private event at my restaurant for a graduation party? Someone wants to reserve the restaurant on a day we are closed, and I wanted to know what the difference in guidelines are that I need to have in place to possibly accommodate a private party such as this. Thanks as always, Melissa. You're welcome, Sean. The guidance for restaurants is the guidance for private events. We talked to the governor's office about differentiating, but everything you need to do for operating a restaurant needs to be done for private events. Plus, if you have a private event, the person paying for the event, the host, whoever you want that to be, needs to provide a list and keep a list of all of the attendees. And I got to pull it up again because I still don't have it memorized because it's like one bullet point longer than I want it to be. It has to maintain a list of all guests in attendance, including phone number and expected location 14 days after the event. So on top of needing to meet all the parameters for your restaurant operations, tables need to be socially distanced, all of that, they need to be keeping a list of all of the attendees as well. Regarding the transaction scan device and the alcohol to go requirements, it's not specific on what they need. We are planning to buy an iPad and load one of the IDs on it and use that. Or have to buy something more of a dedicated scanner, that would be fine. Having some, like I said, it just says you need an ID scanner. So if LCE comes in and says, where's your ID scanner? You show them the iPad and the ability for it to scan IDs, and you check that box. Somebody is attending a meeting in a private space with zero food and beverage. Are they required to wear a mask at all times during the meeting in that space? Yes. The governor's guidance, while we talk about restaurants and hospitality and eating and drinking, they are saying that you need to wear a mask at all times, whether it is shopping at the grocery store, whether it is sitting at a meeting with coworkers, you need to be wearing masks at all times, and that's the requirement. So we've really gone a step further in that space, but as we said, they need to be wearing masks. You need to tell people they need to be wearing masks. How about masks during cocktail hour at a private event? This is going to start the pigs in a blanket conversation from last week. If people their butts aren't in a seat, they need to be wearing a mask. So if you are having a cocktail hour and people are walking around with a glass of wine and they want to get a cheese puff, they need to figure out how to get their mask off of their face to eat that, because technically they need to keep the mask on their face. Those are the rules. So it can't be any more straightforward than that. If their butt is not in a seat, they need to be wearing a mask, and you have to be informing them as such. And we have talked about this last week for private events. Put it in the contract. Have them sign a contract that they recognize that this is what needs to happen. Let's see. I'm asking for a friend, Lisa. The mask requirement regarding social clubs applies. Bartenders and staff should be wearing them, and customers, except when they are seated. Not in Allegheny County, but everywhere else. Yes, there is private clubs. It doesn't matter. If you are a member of a private club, you are still a member of the public, and you need to be wearing a mask, and your employees need to wear masks. There is not a single exception anywhere in any of the guidance that says this person does not need to wear a mask unless it impacts their health or their ability to do their job. So the long answer to that question, which can be a short answer, is yes. Everybody needs to wear a mask at all times. It does not matter the business. Regarding P3, last week you emphasized you get to choose 8 versus 24-week period. Is there any difference between the two scenarios? Any reason to make sure you meet 8 weeks? For example, am I then eligible for things like employee retention, tax credit that I was ineligible for because I was a P3 recipient? This is like another math problem. Or do I then get to file again for P3 because I spent it in 8 weeks? If not, then what? It is like a math problem. And then wasn't it just that they said no more 8 weeks required and everyone gets, okay, let me go back to the beginning. If you extend to 24 weeks, it does not impact any of the other changes that were made for the P3. So if you go to 24 weeks, you are still going to be eligible for the employee retention tax credit. If you go to the 24 weeks, and like I said, they're only talking about a refill of P3 for those that drew it down on like April 5th, who ended at the beginning of last month, right when these changes were made, and they were like, but I already met the 75-25 requirement. This doesn't help me at all. So it doesn't impact ERTC. Going to 24 weeks doesn't impact anything. The only reason that you can stay with 8 weeks is if you did, 60-40 and spent it within 8 weeks, or you did 75-25 and spent it within 8 weeks and you just want it to be forgiven. So there are no penalties on that front. And then for filing again for more P3, the only way that would impact you is if they restrict it to those who drew it down first on April 5th. And I think we're going to see an extension of P3 in terms of being able to draw down again. But going to 24 weeks is really just the fact of you don't have enough. you're in Philadelphia and you can't have indoor seating, and therefore there's no value in you bringing back all of your employees right now. So you might want to extend it 24 weeks to give you the opportunity to use the funds at a time that you might have more employees to use it for. But there is no negative either way. And D, very appropriate. D. Fagan says, no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. Correct. I was wondering where my Michael Leifer question was. Sorry, I was needed elsewhere for a bit and may have missed an answer. I've been told that Governor Wolf may require us all go back to yellow anywhere. No. And he has made it clear that he is not looking to do a unilateral anything as of right now in terms of backtracking. What they're looking is to do a tailored approach, and what they're authorizing is those counties that have their own health department to do a more tailored approach. I do not see us going back to yellow as of the counts today. If we start going over 1,000 a day and the hospitals are becoming overwhelmed and we're running low on ventilators, I think that we need to be scared of yellow. I think that we need to be a lot further in a bad place than to be worried about yellow right now. But you might see some counties that see an increase, like in Montgomery County. I grew up there. We all go down the shore. If they see an increase in cases, you might see places like Montgomery County take a step back in terms of restrictions, but I do not see a full step back to yellow. We can sell customers a mask who don't have one, correct? Yes, you can. Don't price gouge them though. So don't charge them $5 for a 50-cent mask. Do you anticipate the Fit 250 max decreasing? I hope not, but it might be a county by county approach. For example, Philadelphia is technically in green or dull green or purple, whatever you want to call it, but they are saying you can't go up from 25. 25 is still the number in Philly. I think if we see an increase, I think there's a risk. I do. But I think it's going to be more piecemeal than otherwise. And of course, if we're all doing the right thing and our employees are wearing masks and our guests are wearing masks and we're socially distancing and we're sanitizing and everything, then we won't see the numbers increase. And then all of these doomsday scenarios will be a moot point, which is my hopes and dreams. I have a private event space, venue only, no food or alcohol provided by us because we aren't open to the public. We don't actually have a legal occupancy limit. I confirmed this with the fire department. Should we stick to a 25-person limit? The space is about 1,200 square feet. Laura, if you are in Philadelphia, you can't have any indoor dining whatsoever. If you are not in Philadelphia and you don't have an occupancy, it would be 24 people for every 1,000 square feet, plus the social distancing. And I think that covers these scenarios. So it just depends on where you're located. And this is going to get, these webinars are going to get rough if we keep on having counties with different rules. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say to Laura, so that means 28 people in that space, including any service staff and bartenders that are in the front of the house there.
Please advise how we can positively support you in strongly encouraging Allegheny County to separate restaurants from hotel private events, from bars, from hotel private events for alcohol service. With multiple weddings in the next 2 weeks for customers who postpone their events from March, April, and May, the complete alcohol ban in Allegheny County will cause business hardship, as contracts will be impossible to fulfill and will result in significant financial hardship and loss to the business owner. How can we help you in your quest of modification? We are committed to demonstrating reasonable care while sober bars are not being penalized severely for their egregious behaviors. John, how can people help?
Well, what we really just talked about already is you've got to get the word out. What I would do is I've got a number of graphics, and we'll make sure we get those on our website that you can add to your signatures on emails, things that you can send out on social media. We're doing a social media campaign to try to get people to do the right thing. And then that's probably the biggest thing from an information standpoint. And as we said, if you know somebody that's not doing the right thing and you know somebody there, reach out to them and tell them to do the right thing. I think there's going to be a real reluctance to actually separate the bars from the restaurants. and hotels and things like that. So consequently, we've got to get the bad actors to stop doing it, either by pressure from us and from the public, or by getting enforcement in there. That's one of the biggest reasons why we have the problem in Allegheny right now. And Melissa pointed that out earlier.
Yeah, so I mean, part of the conversation that John is going to have tomorrow is going to consist of recognizing that weddings and private events, you are keeping a guest list, you are helping with contact tracing, but I think any change in the rules is going to, as John said, be applied universally. Our hope is that we will get a shift, as we said, and support their crackdown to bad operators, shutting people down for a week, which will then allow the good guys who are following the rules to operate again. So that's
and I will say some very early information we've received just moments ago is that, at least in the case of Allegheny County, they believe that weddings and events like that are part of the problem. So even though we're trying to, but that's definitely on our list of things to talk about tomorrow, high on our list, and we'll have catering folks represented there at the meeting. It's already been stated that weddings are part of the problem.
Man, John, I wanted to end on a high note. We have one more question. Is what I'm hearing now that you foresee restrictions now coming from the county level moving forward for the near future. I think that there are only a few counties that have their own health department. So if you are Erie, Montco, Chester and Delco are combined or using the same health department, Lehigh Valley, if you are a county that has your own health department, those health departments are authorized to have restrictions beyond what the governor is authorizing. So they can do that. To a certain extent, if you are a county that doesn't have your own health department, but you have a surge in cases and your county commissioners or county leadership goes to the governor and says, we need more restrictions, we have a problem, the governor is going to respond to that. So what we are hearing and thinking and feeling at 12:13 on Wednesday, July 1st, is that the governor is not looking to do a statewide change, but I think he will respond very positively to any county that goes to him and says, we need more restrictions in our county. So that is why it's going to be so important for you all to step up in terms of making sure that your county government knows that restaurants are not the problem. We aren't the problem. And it is a two-way street. We have to do our part and our customers have to do theirs. But that's why it's really going to be important, because he will respond to what your county is asking for, and rightfully so. And I think that is taking us to the end. Thank you, Deborah. You and Michael. Michael always says thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think next week will be better. I don't know. I need a break. I would like to sleep a little bit this weekend. So if we could just slow down the COVID cases for the next few days, I would appreciate that.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. As always, this has been recorded and we will make sure to get the recording out to all of you. Plus it will be up on our website. As more webinars come up, we will make sure to put them on our upcoming webinar listing and keep you up to date on our daily updates. This concludes our webinar. So thank you everybody for joining, and thank you Melissa and John for all of your answers to these questions.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you.
Everybody have a great day.